Hi guys, so welcome to lesson 3. The goal for this lesson is that I can draw a graph to represent a frequency table. So here's our heading for today's lesson. So it's graphs of frequency tables. Now first, I would like you to have a think about this question here. So I have two tables of data on the left. And they show the amount of snow in the months of October, November, December, January, and February. Okay, and on the right here I have 6 graphs. So what I would like you to do is have a think about which of these graphs represents the data in table 1 and which one represents the data in table 2. So pause here for a few seconds to have a think about it, and then you can unpause to hear the answer. So you may have figured out that for table number 1, that would correspond to graph F. Now the reason for that is because you can see that for October, you have a snow amount of 4 centimeters. Okay, and then in February you have snow amount of 10, right? And then for table number 2, that's going to correspond to graph A. So we can have a look at the highest amount of snow there, which is 7 centimeters in November, and then also 7 centimeters in February. Now there's a bit of notes I would like you to write into your exercise book. So the first one here, the vertical axis or the y-axis is used to represent the frequency of each item. Now I'm going to show you an example of this graph in a moment. The second thing is if the first column does not start at 0, we can leave some space between the column and the y-axis. And here's an example that I'll show you. So first of all, you can see here, so the vertical axis, that's going to be for the frequency. Okay, so basically what this graph is showing us is the amount of people who belong to a certain age. So we can see that there are 2 people at the age of 8. There are 10 people who are 9 years old. There are 5 who are 10, and there are 3 who are 11 years old. Okay, and also we can see here that there is a gap here. Okay, and this gap is because we are starting at the age of 8. And not 0. Okay. The third thing that I would like you to write down is to show intervals on the horizontal axis or the x-axis. We write the numbers where the lines separate the columns instead of in the middle of the columns. So if you think back to the graph before, you see that the numbers are in the middle of the columns. And in this one here, we see that the numbers, so 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 here, they are where the lines separate the columns. Okay, so not in the middle anymore. And this is because they show us an interval. Okay, and what I mean by interval is this. So let's say I pick this one. What this is saying is that showing all the people who scored between 0 and 9 inclusive. Okay, and then here what we have is we have all the people between 10 and 19. In this one here we have all the people between 20 and 29. This one we have all the people between 30 and 39, and then this final one we have all the people who score between 40 and 50. The last one is a bit different, but that's okay. We know that for this test here, the maximum score is 50. Okay, so basically for intervals, what we're doing here is we are just grouping. We're just grouping people together. Okay, and the reason why we do that is if we draw a graph for each individual score, right, so from 0 to 50, that's going to mean that we're going to have like 50 columns, okay, 51 columns on this graph here, and that's going to look very messy. Okay, so in order to make it a bit easier to for us to read, easier for us to understand, we can group different scores together. Okay, so that's what it means by intervals. So again, guys, just remember that the numbers, we write it where the lines separate the columns. So let's do some example here. So here we got the table, and I can see here that we're starting with 0. So that means that there's not going to be any gap. Also, the maximum frequency here is 20. That means I'm going to leave enough space for 20. So the vertical axis, remember that is for frequency, and the horizontal axis here in this case is the number of siblings. Okay, and we have, let's start with 0. So in this case, we're going to write the numbers in the middle of the column. Okay, and the maximum frequency is 20. Now I'm just eyeballing it here, but what I would like you to do is to actually use your ruler to draw the graph to scale. Okay, so we have about 15 people with no siblings. We have 20 people with just one sibling. We have 13 with 2. So 13 is somewhere between 10 and 15, just above the halfway point. And 2 people with 3 siblings. So 2 again is between 0 and 5, and just below the halfway point. So hopefully that you would have better time drawing this graph than I do if you're working on paper. Right, so there's our graph, guys. Okay, and we're just gonna check with the answer from the textbook. Okay, and it looks very similar. Okay, so that's good. And moving on to the next problem here. So we can see here that we have intervals. Right? So remember that we write the numbers on a line. Okay, so again, vertical axis for frequency. And we have the horizontal axis, and this time it's going to be for the number of words in story. So we're starting with 0 here. Okay, so 0, and then we go up in hundreds. So it's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. And the highest number is 12. So I'm just going to eyeball it here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Right. And what we have is, alright, so two stories with between 0 and 100 words. 10 with 100 to 200. 12 with 200 to 300 words. We have 8 there. 8 between 300 and 400. And then 3. So 3 is going to be between 2 and 4. That. Okay, and here's our graph. So hopefully this helps you with knowing how to draw graph from a table. It's not too complicated, but I would say it does take a bit of time. Okay, so the questions that I would like you to have a look at actually. So check with the answer from the book, and we can see again, basically very similar to what we drew. So here's a questions from the textbook that I would like you to do for this week. So if you feel confident, you can start with the accomplished questions. So 5, 6, 7, and 8. If you feel that you need a bit of help, so you can start with question 2 and question 3. And once you've finished with accomplished questions, if you feel really confident, you can move on to the expert questions 9 and 10. Alright guys, hope this helped, and see you in the next lesson. Bye.